Great. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I am very pleased today to have my guest, Liam Shand. I hope I pronounced that with enough Scottish. Um, and Liam's from Inverness area. He is with Island Paranormal and the Paranormal Experience Show. And that's actually how I first met Liam. I was on his show with a couple other people he shares that with. So welcome, and welcome from the States.
Good.
How is it in Scotland?
Good evening from Scotland. A cold and dark Scotland. Yeah, it's 10 o'clock here, but at night. But yes, looking forward to chatting with you again, William.
Oh, me too. Yeah, it's pretty cold and dark here too. We're expecting floods tomorrow, so yeah. I live on a hill, and the people at the bottom just better have rowboats, I guess. But one thing about me and about the show or whatever, there's a lot of bad humor. It's just the way I operate, so bear with me, folks. How did you get involved with the paranormal? How long have you been doing this?
Been doing it for just over 10 years now. So basically, I know a lot of people that get into this have experiences and whatnot. That wasn't the way I got into it. I actually started watching paranormal TV shows. I'd always had an interest in the history and folklore of the Highlands, and I think the step into the paranormal was probably the next thing to do. So actually, what happened was I met up with some people on the internet, and we decided that basically there was a group in Edinburgh who wanted to set a group up in Inverness. So they arranged, we all met up, we did a mini investigation. For whatever happened, the Edinburgh thing didn't happen. And we just decided at that point, well, let's do it ourselves. And we set up the group from there and started investigating, as it were. And then through that and over the years, we then got involved with the Taps family and doing some casework for them. As a result, was then asked to join that network as well. So at the moment, we're the only group in Scotland who are Taps family members.
Ah, fantastic. I didn't realize that you were family members. That's great. Yeah. How did the show get put together? Because you've got that going too.
Yeah, well, what we did we used to do, and when the world wasn't crazy, we actually used to hold regular meets in the city centre, one evening in a cafe or whatever, a month or every 2 months, where we just get together, a group of people we may have guests in, it may just be ourselves, and we just chat about the paranormal for a couple hours. When COVID struck, we felt it was an opportunity for us to give something back to the folk who constantly support us on Facebook through the Highland Ghosts page. And we started doing a weekly virtual meet for an hour every week. We've slowed that down a little as things have relaxed, but as things are now going back in the opposite direction again, we will probably do a few more. So again, we try to get guests on when we can. We do competitions, and just as I said, be there to just have a chat and a laugh with people, so that folk who can't get out and are stuck indoors and things like that, they've got something to look forward to.
That's fantastic. I had a lot of fun on it, and it's a great way to get information out too about what's going on with the entities, with the. I hate to describe it as a field in general because it's really about the beings more than anything else, in my opinion. But and it's a great service. Now, with lockdowns, obviously there's limits to what you can do. Have you been able to get out and do something even outside? I know Scotland weather this time of year is pretty lousy, but
yeah, the team have managed to get out and do some, ruined castles and old graveyards and things like that. A lot of in cases just revisiting sites that we'd previously visited, but maybe haven't visited for a couple of years. Due to the COVID restrictions, we can't enter people's houses and things like that just now. So what we've basically been doing is giving virtual support there,
right,
on phone, via email, chat, etc., where we can help people. But yeah, The guys, as I said, we've been out to some great sites that we visited in the past, and we've got again some good activity this year as well. You know, you've got 14th century Beiravan Church, which is a ruined church yard, so that's a great location, which always gives us different activity. We've taken guests out there. We've had things like balls of light. We've had my favourite one was when I was taking a group round and the K2 meter was sitting on the ground, and I just basically said, if we get any activity, the K2 meter will light up, and it lit up.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, and again, there's history for you. Lord Nelson's surgeon, one of the surgeons that treated Nelson, is actually buried in Beiravan. So that's one connection. You've also got, maybe it's not a Romeo and Juliet story, but it is a broken heart story. Elizabeth Campbell, who was engaged to Alexander Dunmaglass, who led the charge at Culloden and was killed. She is buried in Beiravan, and it's said that she died 6 months after Culloden of a broken heart. So she's there as well. And it's also got a penance coffin, which was used to punish naughty people in the past. And basically, though the slab has now gone, the Beiravan stone is still there. It's a huge big boulder. And what they would do is they would lay you in the stone coffin. They would put the stone slab on top, and then they'd put the Beiravan stone on top of that, so you couldn't take it off and you'd be left there overnight. One legend says that one gentleman who went in the next morning was 100 years older. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But yes, that again. So again, it's a fascinating site, and it's a site that, as a church and a graveyard, hasn't been used for a very long time.
I've never heard of that tradition.
Yeah.
Now, did they have any way for air to get in there?
Your head was completely open.
Okay.
So the stone slab would be up to here.
Okay.
You would be, as I said, you would actually, but you'd be left in there overnight, which I would imagine would be pretty scary.
Well, and especially with all the wildlife that comes out at night too.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about it. Yeah. I can see where somebody could age 100 years overnight.
Yeah, so that was one site. Dunlichity Church was another site, which again has got a great history. Demon Dog is said to prowl that area. You can actually see also on one of the clan mausoleums there, you can actually see arrow and sword marks from where they sharpened their swords before going into battle and the likes of. So again, it's also got a watch house. So for anyone who's aware of the kind of body snatchers and Burke and Hare characters, most graveyards in Scotland, 18th century graveyards, have got watch houses. Most of them these days are bricked up or being used as stores or whatever. But the one at Dunlichty you can actually get into. And when we go there, we always go in and it always feels fine. But on this occasion, it didn't. And when we reviewed the photographs that were taken in there, we did actually get a shadow on the wall that we could not explain. So again, it's, as I said, it justifies going back to sites as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you build relationships with the entities.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They like you and they want you to come back. They miss you when you're gone. I mean, just like a friend. And I think it's fantastic. I'm going to just mention something here too, because you're talking about you're picking up photos and EVPs and different things. Liam is a tech person by trade, and he knows the difference between a glitch and a camera flare and a cell phone lens and something that's background noise. So these are all things you have to consider in the paranormal and looking at evidence. And they've got an expert on the tech stuff. So, when he's talking about this stuff, it's for real. It's not.
Yeah, I should say I'm the skeptic in the group. I'm the big skeptic in the group. So
actually, that's true too. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I will always try to find logical explanations, and I am sometimes seen as the party pooper and my teammates, when we get onto the subject of orbs and things like that. But it's as I said in my article that I put into you, my whole attitude and beliefs have changed in 10 years, without question. There's definitely something there. And, you go on about relationships there. Well, another building that we've spent quite a lot of time in the last couple of years is Durn House in Portsoy, which is a guest house now. But it has links going right back to Jacobite times, Culloden. And we've kind of struck up a relationship there with a character called Bert, who was actually at Culloden. We've managed to find him. We know he survived Culloden and went back to the house. We actually, when we do events there for Durn House, and we basically allow the guests to take the equipment and use the equipment. We actually did a 15-minute session with dowsing rods, where one of the guests was holding the dowsing rods, and I was asking questions and asking turn rods one way, turn the rods the other way. For 15 minutes, we got intelligent response. We tried to trick, we tried everything. We even got to a point where we believed he was laughing at us.
Right.
And joking, almost joking with us. We worked out he likes the women. But when we asked him how many ghosts, spin the rods for how many times, how many ghosts are in the room with you, how many spirits in the room with you, he spun it about 20 times, and then I kind of says, right, Bert, are you having a laugh with us? Turn the rods to the right, and the rods went to the right. So it was absolutely fascinating. To me, that I can't debunk that. That's intelligent response. We even asked a couple of questions in a different manner to see if we could trick. No, same response every time. So yeah, Bert's one of our favourites, without question. We enjoy going there and communicating with him.
He sounds like a great one to have had a glass of whiskey with when he was alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. What about Culloden? I mean, I don't know that they'd even allow an investigation, but I know you've been there. And what do you? I mean, it's a place you have to go with such great respect. I mean, it's in a lot of ways it's a mass cemetery, certainly a mass killing field. And what kinds of things do you pick up there?
I mean, I should first of all say, as a group, we've all said we will never investigate Culloden Battlefield. Mm-hmm. It's a designated war grave. It's a very sacred site for Scotland. It's for especially the Highlands, as it was the start of the end of the clan system and a Highland way of life that it never went back to after that. The atrocities that happened at Culloden, there was a lot worse that followed through the Highland months that followed. So we never investigated it, but it is a place.
And I don't mean, excuse me, I don't mean with equipment, but just as yourself. And
there's a definite atmosphere of sadness, of burden, of it's almost heavy at times. It's a strange place because it doesn't seem to matter how many people are there. Culloden's a very popular tourist attraction these days, and even more so because of Outlander. And it doesn't seem to matter how many people are there. The atmosphere never seems to really lift. Certainly for myself, I know that people have had experiences there. One that we've been told in recent years is of an elderly redcoat that's seen on the government line waving at small children. He waves at the children. And 5 or 6 different families, and not just local families, we're talking families from Germany and other countries who've been there, have gone back up to the exhibition centre and said, "Do you have somebody out on the battlefield?" No. So that's there. There's reports of the night march before Culloden. So there was a failed march the night before Culloden where they tried to march to Nairn in the east to surprise the government army. It failed, but it is said on the anniversary of that march you can actually hear them marching as well. There's another one which is actually interesting, which is called the Scree, the Culloden Scree, which is supposed to be a large bat-like bird that was supposed to have been seen on the eve of the battle. And it was even reported by commanders like Lord George Murray, who was one of the main commanders of the Jacobite army. And it was said if you see the Scree, it's bad luck. It means that, you know, the impending doom is about to come. And there has been people since who said they've seen the Scree on the battlefield. But yeah, it is a very eerie place. You know, and it's a place that I think has become very, in the past couple of years, actually has become very much in the limelight here because there's been a lot of planning permission for people wanting to build in the area and things like that. And some have been accepted. There seems to be a swing now towards that not taking place any longer and being blocked. Yes, it's been very controversial, and there's been a lot of, you know, local opposition to the building of, and not just local opposition, actually, people from all over the world have been, you know, campaigning against it because, of course, a lot of Jacobites who fought at Culloden ended up in America, you know, ended up in Canada, in these areas. So, you know, there's a lot of descendants as well who you know, Culloden's a sacred place to them as well. So yeah, it is a fascinating place. The guys were actually lucky enough as well to investigate Culloden House.
Okay.
So Culloden House, the one that exists now, wasn't there actually at the time of the battle. But Culloden House was Bonnie Prince Charlie's HQ before the battle. And I believe Cumberland used it from the government side afterwards. However, though the house has changed, the basement is still the same basement. And that includes a basement where, after the Battle of Culloden, some Jacobite officers hid in the basement. The government soldiers came along and basically guarantees were made for their safety. So they were taken out. They were taken along the road a bit to what's now known as the Prisoner's Stone, and they were executed. So again, more links to Culloden there with Culloden House, and that, I mean, it is an absolutely superb building. It's a hotel, luxury hotel now, and has been for some years. But it was at the time of Culloden, it was actually the seat of Duncan Forbes, who actually was pro-government. He was actually in a government post at the time, but he had a lot of sympathy for the Highlands and the Highlanders, and he pleaded that after the battle they were treated fairly. And again, he died within a year, and a lot of people say he died actually again of a broken heart because of the way, you know, the Highlanders were treated afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can believe it because it was horrible. Now, did you just try to put up something, EVP or something? I have a strange box appearing that had some sound lines on it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I have a haunted laptop.
Possessed.
Yeah, I think so. This is a place I definitely need to go back to. When I was there in '84, it was out in the middle of nowhere, basically, and I don't remember the house if it was a place we saw. It sounds like a wonderful place to stay next time. Next time I come up there, it'll be in a car. Again, that's how I went a couple of years ago too. But that first trip was all on a tour. But
it's a fascinating area, and there's so many. Even coming into the city of Inverness, you've got stories around the 45 in Culloden that impacted the town at the time as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been so much blood spread all over, and I know the story about the Scots was when they didn't have an enemy to fight, they were fighting each other back with the clans, and I don't know. I've always loved it up there. It doesn't feel like that combative to me.
Yeah, I mean, literally, if I walk maybe 15 minutes from my house, I can go up to memorial to a clan battle that took place over basically non-payment of passage, and it turned into a massacre. And it was just two clans fighting each other because one refused to pay to go along a road.
Yeah.
There was no messing with them. They didn't hang about.
Now, where else do you go? Do you have, what am I trying to say here? I guess, do you have areas where you can really, and this is even the better question for you who's been the skeptic, not the psychic of the group or something, but where you can feel not just the history, but the spirituality of the place. And I mean, a lot of the Christian places even are probably based on pagan sites that go back. At least I know in England they are, and I would imagine up there too. You take over what's already there instead of creating a new. And the holidays even are often taking over from pagan ones. So I mean, to me, it's a place where it seems like there would be a lot of ancient spirituality as well as modern spirituality that you can feel, not just witness ribbons in the trees or something.
Yeah, I mean, Clava Cairns is the obvious example. So it's actually not far from Culloden Battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
It's an early Bronze Age cemetery. And that's what 4,000 years old.
Right.
And as I said, the guys when they go there, the spiritual guys in the team go there. It very much as they feel it. But I think everybody does. Even when I go there, there's something special about it. It is a very, very, as I said, it's an ancient site. It's a site, unfortunately, now that again has got the Outlander effect. So because the stones, if you've watched Outlander, the stones basically that Claire goes through is supposed to be Clava. So you get a lot of people turning up and touching stones, standing stones, and things like that. That's a Clava. So Clava's got burial cairns and standing stones. So yeah, it's a very special place, and it's not far out, but you do feel like you're out of the way kind of thing when you're there. Another interesting one, we actually did a private case in an area known as the Black Isle. Now I
haven't heard of that place.
The Black Isle. This is Isle. It's not an island. So this is a typical Scottish thing. Let's call it an island when it's not an island. The Black Isle's not. It's a peninsula, basically. But it's called the Black Isle apparently because when the Vikings raided, they burnt it black. So that's why it's called the Black Isle. And again, it's a place that's full of folklore and history and whatnot. And we actually did a private case there where we were brought in. We knew that there was remains of a very, very old cemetery and church at the bottom of the garden. But one of the investigators basically who's very spiritual, felt a presence. Felt a presence of a tall man. So much that actually got a bit too much, and they kind of said, right, we're going to have to take a wee stop for 10 minutes, come back in, and we'll go back in again. So they started again, and this tall man then appeared in front of her. He was only dressed in sackcloth, really, that was it. But it was his height that, it was he was tall, and it was, there's all that. Well, back then there wasn't tall, they were all short people, but no, it was tall. and she could actually feel the sadness in him. There was a sadness, and it was a very emotional night. A year or 2 years later, we were actually doing one of our open meets, and a friend came along, a Lorraine Evans, who is an archaeologist and Egyptologist. She's just, I'll plug her book because she's just released a new book at the moment.
I want to see the link for that. Archaeology, Egyptology, these are my Burying the Dead.
Yeah, so that's Lorraine's newest book. That's just come out, but so I'll give a little plug there for that one. But Lorraine actually turned. We were talking in general. We were talking about the location, and Lorraine just turned around and said, "So did you see the tall man?" And like, what? She had done the dig there. She had dug that site up, so she knew there was a tall man. But apparently, the story goes that the skull of this man was stolen, and that's maybe why he wasn't at rest, and the sadness. So yeah, but yeah, that was a very, very interesting case, and it still gives me goosebumps to tell that story.
Oh, it's fantastic. Now, do they think he was a Viking, or do they think he was a local man?
No, I don't think they're not 100% sure, but they don't. I believe, if I'm right, he wasn't buried in the graveyard, so they think he may have been seen as a criminal but I think he was buried around some children as well.
Okay.
And the theory being that he actually in spirit protects the children. So whether these were illegitimate children that were that were buried, because again back then there's a lot of history of not as far back as then, but if we look at the history of Inverness, when we were starting to do about the local river here, the amount of stories about illegitimate babies being drowned, mothers drowning, it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, and they certainly wouldn't have been in consecrated ground and all the rest of it. It's horrible. Yeah. And I was just wondering because I think some of the Vikings were over 6 foot. Wasn't Leif Erikson or some of those people? Seems like it, but I learn things and then I don't use them for a while and they get jumbled. So
likewise, William. Likewise.
Yeah. I would definitely want to get her book, though. This is right up my alley, and I've been to Egypt. So, and a practicing archaeologist, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me see. What are some of your, if you haven't already mentioned, some of your other favorite sites to go over there?
Well, I mean, I mentioned Durn House already. Touchwood House in Inverness is a favourite of mine. It's a guest house now. You can stay in it. We've done a couple of events in it. It's one where when I turned up, we were going to do a charity event. We turned up at the property. It's an amazing, beautiful building, and we knew the story of there was supposed to be the ghost of a child there. But we actually sat down and we started talking, and we could see flashes of light all around us.
Fantastic.
And, we just thought straight away, this place is buzzing. This place is buzzing. And it is just a fascinating place. We went on to investigate it. On the night we investigated we had one guest who wasn't feeling too well, so our medium Mike had decided to take her outside to get some fresh air. When they walked back in, this little green creature scurried past Mike. So,
and you could all see it?
No. Only the medium was the only one who actually saw it. But when he went back in and he spoke to the owner, who hadn't told me about this little green creature. That basically, yes, he was like something from the woods, and
I was going to ask you about the others
Yeah,
and such when we were done. So this is great. I love
yeah.
this.
So this was new to us. This was like, whoa, we're kind of out of our comfort zone here a bit.
Uh-huh.
Um, and but yeah, it was a fascinating experience, and she confirmed that yes, um, she was aware of this creature, but she hadn't actually seen the creature in about a year, so she thought
Okay.
it had actually gone. But she actually owned two properties in Inverness, and she
Hmm.
actually first saw it in the other property, and she thinks it's followed her to that
Okay.
property. Um,
Now, did she see it physically?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
I should say that she's a practicing witch, so
Okay.
in a good sense.
Yeah.
But so again, she is very switched on and
Hmm.
spiritually minded and whatnot. So yeah,
Right.
we got that in that place. We had a chair rocking in the place. Yeah, it's just scratches under the table. We were all actually sitting at a table, and then all of a sudden we could hear scratching under the table. Yeah,
Yeah. And
fascinating.
when you're with a group of people that you trust, you know nobody's doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So
And
that is definitely a favorite location of mine. But every location's kind of special, It's and
mhm.
again, one of the couple of things that I've learned is one, never go in with expectations.
Right.
Uh, most skeptics will say to you that if you go into a building that is reported as haunted, you will go in and you will think, yes, I'm going to have an experience, and you will have an experience, and it has to be paranormal. But what I've actually found is when I've gone into a lot of these buildings that are reportedly haunted,
Hmm.
nothing happened. I then
Right.
go into a building that's, there's nothing going to be here. And boom, off it goes.
Right.
So, I'm not so sure on that theory, for myself anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
I
that,
don't follow that theory either.
yeah,
And especially with seasoned investigators.
yeah.
Mhm.
And again, as I kind of said about Dunlickety, you can go to a location more than once and get completely different activity. You can go to it one day and you get nothing, and the
Mhm.
next day it might be off the chart. So again, it's you just never know. As we always
Yeah.
tell people, spirit has to want to communicate with us. We can't make it communicate. That's the bottom line.
Right.
If it decides it doesn't want to, it doesn't want to.
And it's their space. They were there first.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have to respect that. Actually, that brings me up to a question. How do you feel the idea of provoking, in the sense of, I'm not talking about playing music of the time, or if you think, the story is the entity had a fondness for scotch and cigars, having one out for him, or her, or whatever. But um, what? Oh, hello, Andy. We've got somebody from Skyline Frankfurt, and that's great. But my ADD kicks in, and I lose the thought of my question. But um, the trying to make them angry so that they respond.
Absolutely dead against it. Never done it. Won't allow it in the group. Nobody in the group would want to do it. It's something that is just it's wrong. It's my opinion is you respect the dead the way you respect the living, and
Right.
it doesn't matter, you know, either way. I think paranormal TV shows have got a lot to answer for.
Mhm.
And we've done a lot of private cases where the clients have been provoking, and it's like that's just not good. It's not good, and I have told a few people off over the years for doing it and said, look, you don't do that. You simply don't do that. I don't think it. I don't know whether it would get a reaction or not. I really don't. I mean, um, I think more relaxed you actually are, as my wife keeps telling me, because she she always gets a better activity in her group because she says we're the fun bunch. We're having a laugh, and it is true. When we're having a laugh and the energies are positive and whatnot, we get more activity. What we find is we're being dead serious, all scientific, and you tend to get less activity. So
I've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah. So again, and is it simply down to the fact of well, I know who I'd rather be hanging about with.
Yeah, these guys are having fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
and I think too. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm totally with you with regards to, as I said, you've got to respect. And going back to this, I know you were using it not as an example, but we have used music and had some success in the past. That rocking chair, that I was talking about, that chair rocking, that was actually as a result of playing music in the room. And, trigger objects, again, that are associated with a story that goes with the property and a character. So again, if we're using a trigger object, we'll try to use a trigger object that individual would recognize.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference. And our history isn't anywhere near as old as yours. Our second, third oldest house in the state was built in 1843. So I'm a member of that. But what we'll do sometimes is we'll dress in clothes of the period as a way to help them feel comfortable. Like, okay, there's something familiar here. And not all the time, it's a hassle, but sometimes. And I don't know if it increases the results or not, but I think it certainly makes them feel better. And that's what a big part of it is about, in my mind. If they feel better too, they're not going to terrorize anybody.
Yeah, I've often thought, that turning up with gadgets that light up and trying to connect with somebody who's 300 years old, they're probably going to be terrified of what you've got. And we actually, recently, we've probably had a lot more success with the dowsing rods than we have with meters and other gadgets, which, has got me kind of scratching my head at times and thinking, well, hang on a minute here. We've been doing this wrong. Don't get me wrong, we do get results on the gadgets as well. But with the gadgets are more difficult because they're so easily manipulated.
Right.
If you don't, I could easily fake a K2 meter going off, for instance. No problem at all. I could do that.
Just moving them wrong can do it. Just moving them the wrong way can set them off.
Yeah. But when you're doing cases where you've got, now you've got things like Wi-Fi, and all these kind of things, they all impact, the instruments. So you've got to be so careful when you're investigating now, and that's why it's key to do a walk around and get your base readings and whatnot. Yeah,
and to know your instruments too.
Sorry?
To know your instruments as well,
yes.
And what they work and how they work.
Yes. What
they're really designed for. Yeah. We don't have something that's designed to say goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a very interesting case just before lockdown. And I've got to say, I think it's the only time where I've been chasing spirit. It really was that crazy. It felt like we were running around the building trying to keep up with this spirit. Two groups of us, and we were both getting activity, and but we'd done a session. My group had done a session, and we felt it was a good idea to get the medium Mike to go in and do a session as well. And he'd gone into the room along with a couple of investigators, and one of the clients. He felt a presence. I think he basically called to get protection for himself. At that point, everybody in the room saw an aura around Mike, a white aura around Mike. Everybody snapped away on their various cameras and phones. not one picked it up.
I
So
believe
you
it.
then ask yourself the question, do we actually have the technology right now to capture spirit on camera or that kind of phenomena on camera? You know, it does make you wonder.
It does.
Yeah, because as I said, that was not one camera not picking it up. That was, I think, 3 or 4 different cameras all snapping away, but none of them able to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and there's just so much in my mind that we can't explain through technology. It's different, and I'm sure it still follows the rules of physics and all that, but it's not in a way that we can always find and from a technical point of view. I mean, I've seen great photos from people I've trusted, and I've heard some really good EVPs, but I've also seen an awful lot of garbage.
Yeah.
And heard a lot that, well, yeah, if you really crane your head and turn your eyes and space out, I can see what you're talking about, but not otherwise. Yeah. Now the little green man. Scotland has a lot of folklore, and I know I personally, actually, several years ago, started seeing some physically, not just psychically, the beings of lore. I thought, well, maybe it's just these mythological creatures. A lot of them aren't myth. It's just that they are interdimensional or something like that. So, some way of crossing in and out. And your team has had at least one experience.
Yeah.
What have you had more? What is your take on this?
I mean, what I find interesting about this is, one, I trust the individuals involved 100%. They wouldn't make this kind of thing up.
Right.
You know, I'm also fascinated at the fact that I'm just noticing Anna there. Hi.
Yeah.
Saying that she's got the book. Good.
Yeah.
I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah,
Sorry.
I was going to say, what was I going to say again? Oh, it's gone totally out of my head. What was the question again, William?
It was about the metaphysical beings, the folk, the people that seem to come from other universes in and out, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, that's the only real experience I think we've had, documented experience where, you know, non-human. I have been told other stories. The Green Man. I've been told on several occasions by an individual that he's seen the Green Man down the Loch Ness side road on the south side road, which is a single track road for a lot of the way, and it's not as good a road. He's convinced he saw that. You know, folklore with fairies, for instance, that you know, that's very, very strong still in the Highlands. In fact, you know, I grew up in the Highlands, right next to the what's called Fairy Hill, which is the local.
Wonderful.
It's the local cemetery called Tomnahurich Cemetery, and basically, as I said, I grew up and went through that quite almost daily, and the tale goes there that there's various tales connected to that actual cemetery and fairies and other Celtic legends. It said that fairies, there's a great fairy hall within the hill, and it's basically the tale goes of 2 musicians who were approached by a strange small man in Inverness and asked could they play at a party. They were taken to the hill, a door opened, they went in, they entertained all night long. In the morning they came out, everything had changed. They walked back into town, people were pointing at, laughing at them the way they were dressed, because the people were dressed totally differently. 100 years had passed. They walked into a church and they turned to dust. That's the tale of the two fiddlers and the fairies. And that is one of the key things with the fairies, is their ability to change time at completely different times. Again, your interdimensional theory there, that while the fiddlers said it was one night, it was actually 100 years had passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I'll just be 2 seconds.
Okay.
That's me. Sorry, I didn't realize I hadn't actually switched my power onto my laptop. It was about So the Fairy Hill, as I said, it's still known by a lot of the locals as Fairy Hill. I think probably because Tomnahurich Cemetery or Tomnahurich Hill is a bit of a mouthful, so probably that's maybe why they still call it Fairy Hill. But that takes us on to another legend as well, and another thing in the Highlands is second sight. Mm-hmm. So there was a famous seer in the Highlands, the Bran seer, and he had many prophecies. One of being that tall ships would sail to the west of Tomnahurich Hill. What he wasn't there at the time, but is there now and has been there since the 1800s, is the Caledonian Canal. The tall ships did sail, but not in his time. So he foresaw that, along with things like the coming of the Iron Horse, which was the train, and many more. Prophecies about great disasters in Inverness if so many bridges are built. Again, there's an argument: have the number of bridges been built that need to be built? One argument suggests there has been, and when there was, the railway bridge collapsed. Though thankfully, no train was running across it at the time. But there's various prophecies of his as well. And we've previously done one of our meets on some of his prophecies. So he's another interesting character.
Fantastic. I love it. Yeah. Well, especially when you hear some of these that actually have some evidence of truth to at least some of what they're picking up on. I mean, there's Nostradamus and his sayings, but a lot of people have also said, but they can be interpreted this way or this way, but these are pretty direct and succinct.
Yeah, I mean, not everything he has predicted has come true, but he also predicted Culloden. He also predicted the Battle of Culloden and which way it would go. So that was another one of his predictions. And you read these and you think they can't mean anything else. They really can't mean anything else. And again, his fate was sealed. And he was actually burnt in a barrel for upsetting a clan.
For upsetting a crime?
One of the clans.
Oh,
he basically told the clan chief's wife that the chief was being unfaithful, and she flew into rage and had him burnt. And you can actually visit the site. There is a memorial to him where that happened. And then you've got witchcraft as well, which again, obviously witchcraft in America as well, Salem and things like that. Again, witchcraft over here was again, there was a lot of innocent people persecuted.
Wasn't James the first? Didn't he write a treatise on it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we did a meet on virtual meet. We did a thing on witchcraft locally in Inverness, and what I didn't actually realize at the time was that Inverness basically, if it's a witch, burn them. So there's actually cases where the top lawmakers in Edinburgh got involved and said, we don't think this case should be tried in Inverness. It needs to be tried in Edinburgh because of that.
Wow.
There is a great story, though, that goes of a witch called Crabe, who basically was to be burnt at the stake at Inverness Castle.
Okay.
She asked, though, as her last request, she asked for a glass of water. Somebody went to get her a glass of water, but it was knocked out of his hands before he could pass it to her. And she said, "Damn you all! I was going to drown you all." So that's what she said. Interestingly enough, about 15 years later, one of the officials that was involved in that witch trial was riding his horse through an area called Milburn in Inverness, where Craig had come from and where it was all the witches were said to live. For whatever reason, something spooked his horse. He was thrown from his horse and died. And they said that was Craig's revenge.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too that she was burned, because in the U.S. and England, witches were usually hung and the heretics were burned.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting too that you were burning them up there, not hanging them.
Yeah, there was some that were hung as well. I mean, there was ones through the Kirkhill witch trials as well, which was another one. You know, with the famous witch picker who turned out to be a woman and not a man, as well. So you know, it's another fascinating, either tragic, completely tragic, either. But you know, again, so many stories, and witchcraft is still kind of got a hold even to this day. You know, people get kind of spooked. You know, and certainly you go back to maybe 100 years ago, and still in the Highlands, you know, it was thought that people definitely could still be witches. There was a story of a woman who turned around to a young girl on the local ferry boat and said, "Oh, you've got a lovely smile." And as soon as that happened, the young girl had basically had a stroke, and her smile dropped. And a lot of people thought that was witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see where they would, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially if not a lot of education had reached them yet.
Yeah.
But it's so tragic because of the innocents that were harmed from all of this. I mean, because so much of this was jealousy, or somebody wanted something somebody else had, or revenge, or most of it had little to do with anybody really doing something to somebody in a negative way. Some of it maybe, but not that the witchcraft prevailed. It's just there were some nasty people accused of witchcraft as well as good ones. But I've been to Salem and Massachusetts, where they famous for the witch trials, and it's one of those parts of history you think, how could people by that point in history been so stupid to do this to people?
Yeah, it's you know, in the Highlands, the Highlands has always been a very religious and very superstitious place for a very long time. I mean, it's not. It's kind of moved on now, but you know, there's still areas if you go out to the islands and things like that where everything's shut on a Sunday, and you know, for religious reasons and things like that. So there is still a lot of superstition, and I said in certain areas, religion has a big say on matters still till this day. You know, but I'm not aware of anyone being accused of witchcraft in the Highlands for a long time, thankfully.
Okay, good. And hopefully there aren't any laws against it on the books.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I think there was a case in England in World War II.
Yes.
The woman knew about the sinking of a ship or a submarine and wound up in prison.
Yeah.
because they couldn't understand how she could have known about it unless she was a spy or something. I don't
Helen,
remember all the details
yeah,
anymore.
Helen Gordon. I think it was Helen. I think it's Helen Gordon because actually,
Yeah.
I know one of her descendants. One of her descendants was actually investigating at Touchwood House with us as a
Oh
guest.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a small world.
It is.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to talk to this person about her?
Yeah, she didn't know too much. She knew who Helen was and whatnot, and if you look into Helen Gordon, there was that side of it, but there was also the side where there was questions whether some of what she was doing was legit. Very much at that she was at that time where they were still almost like parlor tricks in some cases, and the old ectoplasm coming out of the mouth and things like that.
Yeah.
So, but I think that at the same time, I think that what she definitely had something.
Right.
You know,
Well, there's no way she could have known about that
no,
ship sinking, I don't think.
no. I've always said with mediums that it's very rare to find a good medium because I think the majority of people don't actually know how to use it. And I'm being very generic when I say that because I'm no expert. I'm not a medium or anything like that. But what I found is that very few seem to be able to control it, understand it, uh, and use it. We were very fortunate in the medium that we use that he can. He's very honest and upfront with us. I mean, we turned up at a private investigation, and he turns around and says, "For goodness sake, I lived in the house next door as a kid." You know, or we've gone to another site where we knew that there'd been a murder taking place, and as soon as he was like, "Whoa, hang on a minute," he says, "I know everything about this. This was all over the press and things like that." So we're very fortunate, and he's had some brilliant hits, absolutely brilliant hits. From a maid going around her duties. We had to go back and look at further research, and we found her, but it was difficult to find her. But we found her name, dates,
Okay.
all right. And then the more bizarre things. Now, I'm not sure if all the international viewers will have heard of Benny Hill.
Oh, that was one of my dad's favorite programs over here.
Entertainer. So
Yeah.
we were doing a private case, and I just love this story because it just sums up his abilities so well. He basically, we're in this room, the client, myself, and Mike, her medium, and he says, "I'm getting Benny Hill." I'm getting Benny Hill coming through. And I said, "Mike, you have lost it." And the lady turned around and says, "No, no, no. This was my uncle's room. Benny Hill was his favorite TV show, and I used to come here and watch Benny Hill with him." I was like, wow. So yeah, it is amazing. As I said, when you get that kind of hit, and you just think that's just how. There's no way you could know that. So yeah, it's.
I'd like to meet him someday. Yeah. It's because you're right. It's difficult. That's part of what I like to do is I help teach people how to open up their abilities because I think everybody has them. It's learning what they are, how they work. I mean, it's a process. It's not just you wake up someday in the morning and say, "Okay, I'm going to do this now." I mean, hang the shingle up and say, "Okay, now I'm a psychic medium." So
yeah,
some people do, but it's kind of scary.
Yeah, we've had several cases where we've had to go in and mop up after a medium's visited a house and terrified families, absolutely terrified families, and we were going on earlier about the fact that we won't agitate or be disrespectful to spirit.
Right.
At the same time, we will never go and terrify
No.
a client. The funny one is that I keep coming back to is one where we went into that there was a warped kitchen floor. Now, clearly, at some point, they'd had water spill or they'd had a flood or something. But the medium turned round and told the client that they had a river of souls flowing under their house.
What?
Yep. So obviously the client is terrified, absolutely terrified. So we get a call, and we went in, and we managed to disprove that one pretty quickly.
Good.
You know, but yeah, that I'm sure it's the same for other groups and whatnot. That there is that. Unfortunately, there's people out there who just seem to be interested in making a bit of money and don't really care about the consequences.
Yeah.
Sadly.
When I read a house, I don't charge. I don't do it very often, and often it's with a team that wants me to help out. But for something like that, I'm happy to give a hand and see what I can do. And most of the time, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Or it's the humans in the house are having issues that they need to work on because it's manifesting in an energy in the house that isn't as nice. But it's workable.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point you make there. I mean, I think that's something that I was never prepared for, was the human element. When you start out on the road to paranormal investigation, you think gadgets, you think ghosts, you think cool, but the reality is that you are at times dealing with troubled living souls, and that's probably the most challenging part of it, to be honest. And likewise, we don't charge for what we do. I never would. I mean, often people come and say to me, "Why don't you charge anything?" Or and I go, "Why would I? Where's the respect?"
Yeah.
Just alone. One, I can't guarantee. I will never guarantee that we can get answers or rid. In some cases, they ask us if we can move something on, which in some cases we will try to do. But it's a respect thing. No, I would never charge. To go and to do. I know some groups do, but again, it's like the term professional paranormal investigator. It's like there's no such thing, or paranormal expert. There's no such thing.
That's right.
You can't.
You have to start run away from.
Yeah, we'll never in our lifetime. We will never get all the answers.
No.
Nowhere near. If we're lucky, we'll scratch the surface.
Yeah, and as a medium, I do charge for teaching, and I charge for readings with people. Things like that. That's different. Not the houses, not investigations, but I know what I'm shown and what I'm told, but I'm aware that even that may be whatever is in charge of consciousness tells us, because we're not ready for all the rest of what the truth is, or our minds can't deal with it, or whatever. Not that it's bad, it's just bigger than what we're able to take in at this point. And so I'm open to the idea that there's an illusion that's being given to help us cope with and deal with life and afterlife. And but it's fascinating, and I like doing it. I made a lot of friends that are dead, but Liam, it's a little past. We've got a little over an hour. Do you have anything you want to mention before we sign off, or how people get a hold of you or your team? Or
just I mean, you can get a hold of us at either highlandparanormal.org, or we're on Facebook at Highland Ghosts. So either way, you can contact us. I'd just like to thank you, William, for inviting me on, and wish you and everyone watching a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope 2021 is an improvement.
Yes, I agree. And I want to thank you too for being here, and thank everybody for watching. And I'll have the links up to watch it on Facebook or my YouTube page later today or maybe tomorrow. But this has been great. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks.